had this idea many years ago for this record called Lovers. Never thought I'd perform it live, by the way. It was just a concept album with a large ensemble playing updated, aesthetically updated versions of my own music and so-called standards and music from movies and musicals that related to the idea of romance, love, intimacy, sexuality, and that would be like a mood music record of the 60s, but more psychologically and emotionally realistic, shall we say. In other words, the dark, murky, kinky, upsetting, questionable, and most exhilarating and warmly romantic things would all be equally represented. So I first thought about this in the late 80s and thought I wanted to do something that was pretty dark, like some of the pieces that are on the recording called Lovers that we finally did from that time, from that list of songs that were not mine, are the theme from the movie The Night Porter with Charlotte Rampling and Dirk Bogarde, a cue by Henry Mancini, which we played today here at Newport, called The Search for Cat from Breakfast at Tiffany's, but which is not on the soundtrack album. It's when George Peppard and Audrey Hepburn are looking for the cat in the trash cans because you know, Holly Golightly's on the cab going to the airport. She's going to disappear, and she throws her cat out of the cab, and it's this horrible moment. And the movie is very important to me, and it was to my family as I was growing up. And this piece of music, which has a Moon River variation in it, was something that obsessed me for years and years. It turns out when I met Michael Leonard, who orchestrated and conducted the music, he was also obsessed with this cue. And so that was always on there. Cry Want by Jimmy Giuffre, which we didn't play today because it's so sparse and so it's very stark. That was on my list, it's on the recording. But anyway, years went by and all I did was make lists of songs and write some songs for this concept album, Lovers, and the list got longer and longer. And it was after being asked about it by various record labels. It was my friend and producer David Breskin who heard about it as we were hanging out one day, and he started bothering me to make it happen. And I said, well, it's going to be unaffordable. And he basically, through Angel City Jazz and a little bit through this organization called the Shifting Foundation, created a fund to get the record made. So once this started, because it cost a fortune, once this started, he kept asking me, so what's going on with Lovers? And I was becoming so daunted by the idea of arranging all this music myself, because my arranging skills are, shall we say, at best have flashes of originality, but virtually no classicist discipline. You know, I needed some stuff that sounded normal. And I met, through my wife Yuka, Michael Leonard, who's our neighbor in Manhattan. And we were hanging out one day in his apartment with his family and eating pizza. And Michael and I were just talking about Quincy Jones and Gary McFarland and obviously perhaps Johnny Mandel. And I said, well, you know, I've had this idea for a long time. And as soon as I described it, he said, let me help you with this, you know, seriously. So he did. I mean, basically I told him the palette that I wanted. There were certain songs that I had very specific arrangement ideas for, and others where I just needed somebody to just step in and take my lead sheet or my instrumentation, because I wanted very few saxophones, flutes, clarinets, muted brass, very lush. We were calling it, like, I think it was Michael who came up with minimal lush. And it eventually happened that we made this record, and it was very long. It was David Breskin who made it happen, but also encouraged me to just record everything I could. He said, don't worry about the length, you know. So at the 11th hour, it became licensed by Blue Note Records. And Don Was heard it, which is completely insane. I was going to put it out myself. But I got asked early on when I was starting to record it, well, when am I going to do this live? And I told my manager, Ben Levin, I said, I don't want to do this live. It's just, no, I just want to make this document and just get on with my life. Well, of course, George Wein wanted us to do it. Somehow he heard about it, and here we are at Newport, and I had to do it live. And we did it for the first time today. And we did an hour's worth. Well, it was supposed to be an hour's worth. I was so scared that I'd go over that we played too short. But I really was. I was freaking out up there, thinking like, we're gonna go too long. We only have an hour. The music's like, we have 90 minutes of music, and Anyway, what an honor, right? I mean, seriously. I never thought I'd play Newport at all, let alone I'd play my own music with an 18-piece band made up of people, many of whom I've listened to most of my adult life and who are leaders in their own right, and all incredible players. So, pretty mind-blowing day. I was scared. The rehearsal process for this concert today was initially, well, it seemed kind of simple because we were all going to play the show, so at least we'd all be in the same place. All of us but one person are on the East Coast. My brother, Alex, my twin brother, lives in our hometown of Los Angeles still, and he's really, when he's willing to travel, he's the only guy that I want on this music, and that's been true since I first thought about it. His protean abilities, his shading, his experience playing with big bands, not just jazz groups, not just avant-garde groups, his ability to use extended techniques and textures, but also to swing and like play great drums. He's the guy. So Alex had to come from Los Angeles. Everyone else was either in New York, Brooklyn, or Carla Kilstead came from Cape Cod, where she lives, very close. But then we realized that, well, we're going to have to rehearse here in Newport. So my management somehow figured out, with the nice people from Newport Jazz Festival, that we could rehearse yesterday evening, in the Mule Barn. So I went to the Mule Barn yesterday, which I must tell you was extremely warm. They had fans blowing, but we had to turn them off so we could get our music audible. And we just dripped, and we had basically 2 hours after setup to run as much music as we could. And I didn't know how much time we needed, but that was all we had. And it wasn't really adequate, but we just went for it. And everybody except Marika Hughes and Carla Kilstead had played on the record, but that was a long time ago. The record's been sort of sitting there now that it went through this new phase of Blue Note licensing it, and so that now we're going to look at another 6 to 8 months before, you know what I mean? It's been sort of aging, hopefully gracefully. And of course these people are amazing players, but there's a certain amount of extemporaneousness to the music where there's cues, and it's not just completely just play it down and thank you, good night. But we did it. I would next time ask for another hour. One more hour. But I don't know. It's incredible we pulled it off at all. And music's hard for me. So I'm not one of these people that can just get up there and like Scooby-Doo, or like, my friend Julian, who basically is one of the most incredible musicians that ever lived, and he's 28, and I'm 60, and I'm basically just up there like so nervous and freaking out. So having that much musical greatness around me and Michael's beautiful arrangements, it did help. It did help after the 2 hours of rehearsal, knowing that people were going to really play great. Ready? Nels Cline.